There we go.
Well, I think we're live now. I hope we're live now.
We're live.
We're live. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Tony Canuli, the host for the Slight Edge Zone, and we have a very special show today. I've got a good friend of mine, an incredible MLM attorney in the direct selling space. His name is Kevin Thompson. And Kevin Thompson, I'll tell you, what I love about this guy. Just the other day, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was recommending Kevin, for him as a potential client. And so I talked to Kevin, and he says to me, "Well, what do you like about this guy?" I said, "Well, he's a competent guy. He's really good at what he does, but he's just cool." And anyway, so basically you got the referral because you're cool, Kevin. You're just one of the cool guys in the profession. You're a lot of fun to work with, but you got a great head, real level-headed thinking. You're a family guy. And so I just loved anytime we've ever done anything together. And I know when you and I did the show a couple of years ago with Zeke Rewards, with that whole fiasco with Len Clemens, it was a lot of fun. And so all the work you do is first class, and I love to have the opportunity. So welcome to the Slight Edge Zone today, and we're going to have some fun. We're going to share some interesting information.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Tony. It's been too long, and I'm happy to hear that you're feeling better and your health issues are resolved. I was worried about you, and about the cool comment. One of the things that our firm is, we make sure people are very competent at what they do, but also part of the criteria is you can't be socially dysfunctional, because clients are human beings, and you got to be able to connect with real people. And clients in this industry especially, they don't want too much legalese. They want straight talk as far as what they can and cannot do. And I try to give people candid advice. So thanks for having me on. We got a big agenda, so let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, most of the people, Kevin, know about the VEMA situation that's happened, and that's been covered quite a bit. And matter of fact, you're going to be doing another post here, I think tomorrow
or the next day about, we've already done part one about what happened, why the judge said what he said, what it means for VEMA. Part two is what it means for the rest of the industry. And I think that's going to be very, very important for a lot of people in the space, both corporate and field.
Absolutely. So we'll be looking forward to that, and I'll be reposting that as well. And so we're not going to cover a lot of that, but we're going to cover some issues that are around that. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is BDAs, or bridge loans, as some people know them as, or business development. What does that stand for, Kevin? It's
business development agreements.
Agreements, that's right. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, how it affects the profession. We're going to talk a little bit about customers and some of the things that are happening in the direct selling space here in the show. But we got some valuable content that we're going to share. So, one of the things that you talked about was truth in advertising. And I think we should start off the show just talking a little bit about some of the things that really hurt VEMA, for instance. And one of them is just this truth in advertising situation that you and I spoke about, as far as it moving forward and affecting other companies. Well, why don't we start with that, Kevin?
Yeah, VEMA is certainly an interesting test subject here. Really, it boils down to VEMA had a significant presence on college campuses. I mean, that's the main thing, and that led to a significant number of consumer complaints. Now, the FTC, they saw that activity and they wanted to do something, but VEMA had to leave itself exposed, and they did. So there were certain things that they did and how they promoted their business. Mm-hmm. Granted, in my opinion, it wasn't worthy of a full shutdown. There's a lot of companies, pharmaceutical companies sell drugs that kill people. They don't go out of business. They don't get put out of business and put in receivership. Here, you've got some problems, and I think the punishment didn't fit the crime. But where VEMA left itself exposed, it was just the culture of the field. It was a culture of buying primarily to qualify for bonuses. Mm. So there was very little references to customer sales, as alleged by the FTC. And also, the Federal Trade Commission got statements from field leaders and also BK Barreco, where the field was basically saying, you don't have to get on auto ship, but wink, wink, you need to be on auto ship so you stay qualified. And so what the judge did, he said, okay, we can't really prove inventory loading because VEMA has really good refund policy, but we can infer that people were buying primarily with the intent of qualifying for bonuses. How can you infer that? look at the general theme of all the marketing materials. And that landed Vima obviously in a very uncomfortable situation that they're currently in.
Mm-hmm. I see that. I see that right away. And, you know, moving forward, matter of fact, Vima may not have even been attacked if it hadn't been for some of those errors and mistakes that you were just talking about. I believe that. But you know, that particular group is very powerful. And there's other companies that potentially are going to be on the radar, actually are on the radar, as I've seen here more recently as well, Kevin. What's your thoughts on that moving forward? Because nothing you can do. Everything's documented these days. It's, you know, no matter how you look at it, what you say, what you do. And we saw that with BK, with the FTC ruling, that, you know, pulling back things from 2 and 3 and 4 years ago and beyond that they were using against him. And unfortunately, you know, BK is such a great guy. I love him. I know you do too. And it's so hard. And by the way, while I'm on that subject, before you answer the question, I just want to reiterate what Troy Dooley has been saying, and which is to support Vima, buy some product, you know, go to the website, use some of their products. They got a phenomenal product line right now they could use to help. They really are a great organization. And BK is a phenomenal guy, phenomenal family man, somebody that I have a great deal of respect for. So that would be a help. I just like to recommend that. So anyway, Kevin, so this whole group that we're talking about is very powerful. And what do you see? How do you see that affecting some of the other companies in the space?
We mean this group being Truth in Advertising?
Yes.
Truth in Advertising is a website, and it's something that deserves a lot of respect. The woman behind it is Bonnie Patton. I never met her personally, but I saw her actually in court at the hearing regarding the FTC's injunction over Vima. She has what looks to be like a significant amount of influence with the FTC. And when they focus on a company, the companies need to go into DEFCON 5 and take it seriously, because that site, that person, and maybe she has a staff, they do a lot of research. They don't just say, hey, this company is making some aggressive income claims. They will compile 20, 30, 40 examples, and they'll put them on PDF format, organize them, put them on a website, right? Literally putting an enforcement action on a silver platter for the FTC. So with Vima, they did over 14 articles over the past 2 or 3 years. And Truth in Advertising got interested in the network marketing space after Bill Ackman publicly shorted Herbalife. So I think all of the roads lead to Bill Ackman. I think that's what got their interest in the space. They focused on Vima, and it was like a drip campaign, and it was very effective. And so currently they've got an article out there about Jeunesse, which Jeunesse obviously needs to take that very seriously.
Yes, I can see that, and that you can kind of see that trail, because like you said, they had done so many articles on Vima, and so you can see that moving, and you're starting to see that now with Jeunesse. And speaking of Jeunesse, since you brought up the name, I know you're involved in a case right now that I don't know if you can speak about, or maybe you can, maybe you can't, but regarding some of the things that companies are doing that also make it easier for them to get in more trouble potentially with regulators and create more distension with some of the leadership in the company. I don't know if you can talk about any of that or not.
Yeah, so on occasion, I'll represent a distributor, very rarely. And the Jeunesse case is about a distributor that was terminated, and his position was given to somebody he personally enrolled. And we're dealing with that. Actually, there's some discussions, hopefully, to work it out. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to incite any passions over there. I will say this: there's a lot of things that Jeunesse can do better. They recently hired Meredith Burkitch, who was formerly at Veridian. And I met Meredith in Nashville probably 4 or 5 years ago. I like her. I don't know her very well, but what I've been told is that she is not a big supporter of this whole idea of a BDA culture, of a company that grows by way of confidential business development agreements. And it's no secret, that's one of Jeunesse's secrets to its success. And I think it would be unwise to continue on that path going forward. And I think it subjects itself to just a tremendous amount of risk. Now, that being said, I don't know the extent of which they're currently doing BDAs, and I know in the past it was an issue, but as far as currently and their future plans, I'm not sure. But now, that being said, can I mention generally about BDAs and my thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of
Okay.
fact, it's controversial, but I honestly believe that it's an area that's going to need refinement moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. So forget Jeunesse and specifically, and let's just talk about the idea of building by way of confidential agreements. I have written multiple articles on the subject, and I've been very transparent about my thoughts. And in my opinion, they can be legal in theory, but I've never seen one properly done. If there's a material connection, here's the rule. I always start with the rule. If there's a material connection between somebody and a company, such as, for example, a doctor that sells a sleep apnea product, if that doctor gets a revenue share of sales, that's a material connection that would not be reasonably known. So if you have that kind of relationship, it has to be disclosed. That is black letter FTC guidelines. And these BDAs, up to a point, they're not material. You can make an argument that maybe they don't need to be disclosed. If somebody gets a top up, they get, they're guaranteed $5,000, they earn $3,000, they get an extra $2,000. Maybe that's not material. But if they get preferred positions in the genealogy, if they get extra incentives on top of the pay plan, if they get upfront fees, like significant fees, that's material. It needs to be disclosed. It's never disclosed. So in theory, you could do them. The problem is the antidote is it's poisonous, right? The antidote is disclosure. When leaders disclose the special treatment they're getting, it undermines their message. It undermines the illusion that they're joining for the right reasons and they're building it like everybody else. And so you never see disclosures. Another problem is that when a company gets hooked, right? Because BDAs, it leads to momentum. You can create a wave. You can create a current. Problem is when you rely on momentum to lead to more momentum, when it stops,
it's like a cocaine addiction, as you had put it earlier.
It's like cocaine addiction. It's speed. It's addicting, and that revenue, it just does this. And when it stops, the company suffers. I mean, it goes through significant withdrawal. And if you go from being $200 million per month business down to $80 million per month business, that's a significant loss. And then what happens is people start to panic and then they leave because they didn't join for the right reasons. They joined because it was the hot thing. I think it's toxic. I think it's toxic. And companies that do it, there's going to be class action litigation on this very issue. I'm aware of a case about to be filed in California. And companies need to take it seriously and stop. They just need to stop.
It's interesting, Kevin. Early in my career, it was like back in 1992, whoever dates me, and I had been in networking for 7 years, and I'll never forget this. But I had worked my face off for about 14, 15 months, and I had achieved the second to highest rank in the company. I was 23 years old. I thought I had, died and gone to heaven. I had about 5,000 distributors, and this is an old stair-step breakaway comp plan. Built 5 teams. No one was placed on the mic. That we didn't have any of this enroller placement or anything you see in the binary. And I'll never forget this. To this day, I went to an event, and a gentleman stood up there. His name was Steve. We're friends to this day. And he stood up there, and he says, I'm a gold rank distributor. And he told his story. And I said, oh, my gosh, this guy's the same rank as me. He started 2 months ago. How did he do it? And so I got with him after the event, and I said, oh, you must be, I need your autograph, I'm going to shine your shoes because I've been working my face off 12, 14 hours a day for almost 15 months. I got 7 years of experience, and here you are at the same rank. And I said, well, how big is your group? And he goes, about 80 people. And I'm like, 80 people? I did the math, and I had about 5,000. And I'm like, uh-oh, something's not right. So I went to a friend of mine, Gregory Mascari, actually, way back, we're old friends. Gregory's a seasoned leader. And I said, what's the deal with this? And he goes, well, that's called a lateral transfer. And I said, what's a lateral transfer? And he goes, well, basically, he was at a certain rank before he got into the company, and they allowed him to maintain that rank in the new company. So he jumped over the steps that you would normally take to reach. So he was getting paid at the level starting.
They flagged him at a higher rank.
They flagged him at a higher rank. And so that was my first real opening or eye opener to incentives. And I didn't know about, I was a little young, I guess, but I didn't know about BDAs or any type of incentives. Fly-ins, I knew about things like that. That's about it. So I can remember feeling if at that point, if I hadn't have such a big business and I wasn't doing as well as I was, I may have quit. I remember it really, really bothered me because I worked my face off, and this guy was just giving it, he's like dying, like knighted. And so that really bothered me. But that was my story from back then. And we do have a lot of it now, but it does create some discourse, as you said. If you do disclose, obviously, people, it can demotivate the field. At the same time, it's a really tricky situation. If you were to recommend or explain to a company, for instance, how to do it right, or if they were to do it, are there anything you could talk about that you think would be helpful in the process of them creating these agreements?
Sure. No, I wrote a post on it. MLM Special Deals Part 2. You can Google search it, and basically, it's everybody acknowledges the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody in the industry acknowledges the issue, but people quit when it comes to, yeah, but how can you fix it? They throw their hands up, and they just don't they don't burn any brain cells thinking about how to fix it. Because they kill it with minutia. For example, they'll say, well, yeah, but what if somebody was flagged at a higher rank and 6 months later they earned that rank and 2 years later they're fine? Do they have to disclose the past deal, right? They just kill it with minutia, where the exceptions swallow the rule, where they say, we know that there needs to be disclosures, but how much disclosure? Oh, that's complicated. Screw that. And they ignore it. So what I did, I specifically said, companies just need to do this. And it was very simple. It is very simple. And of course, nobody's done it. But basically, you have a certain rank for people that have received deals. Mm-hmm. Or it could be as simple as a plus sign. Bronze plus, gold plus. What does the plus mean? In the definition somewhere, plus means this person has received extra considerations beyond the confines of the pay plan. Something like that, where at least it's out there. You don't have to tell them specifically what they got. Nobody will ever do that, right? You have to be practical. A lot of lawyers, they're so heavenly minded, they're no earthly good. The reality is you got to offer practical solutions. And so just a simple plus sign is in my opinion, would be a tremendous benefit. Will companies do it? Will they even do that? Which, by the way, isn't a whole lot. No, they're not going to do that.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. So no, they want to ride that wave, and they want to pretend like, hey, these people are joining us because we're a great company with a great product, with a great pay plan, and they love our leadership. They want people to buy into that message because it creates a more fertile environment for recruitment. So I'm not optimistic that you'll ever see disclosure. I don't think it's that complicated, but I'm not optimistic it'll ever happen. And what will happen? Companies are going to get hit, right? Regulators are going to make the argument, and like I said, there's a case in California where they're going to make the argument. I don't know. Maybe people will wake up when that happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the things that I really have a challenge with some of the bridge agreements that are out there is, and it brings out the inner Rocky Marciano in me. I get so hot on this. Is some of the companies and some of the corporate executives will set up some of these agreements and put a distributor in such a place that in order for them to even maintain or meet some of the requirements that are in there, they must
have to raid.
They have to raid. Yeah, they have to attack. And, once again, my friend, before this, I had a few conversations with some seasoned pros. Gregory Muscari was one of them. And Gregory had talked about, he says, are you sending a life raft or are you shooting a torpedo? And at the end of the day, so many times you'll see that the way they're worded, the way these contracts are set up, Kevin, that they're literally firing torpedoes, and you're not really sending a life raft. You're doing more harm. And that creates and that follows a company, and that builds the momentum in of itself. And we've seen that in other companies. I saw it in Monavie, and I'm not afraid to say that. It's true. I've seen it in many other companies.
How's Monavie doing today, by the way?
Well, that's They're how's that working for you?
Yeah, yeah. How you like them apples?
One of my friends, Robert Hollis, wrote that book. Is that work? I think is that working for you? How's that working for you now?
Yeah.
Robert is he's another one that gave me some input on some of these agreements. But that's a challenge, that they put certain things in place and they encourage you to go rip apart, to destroy one building to build a bigger building. And it's just never been. It's just not a good thing. I've never seen that being a good thing, Kevin.
I agree. Well, what else was on our agenda? We're going to talk a little bit about
customers.
Yeah, Vima going forward. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's going to be in my part 2 article, but basically, the judge in the order said Vima has to do XYZ, right? They can still pay commissions. They're still in business, which is great. But affiliates aren't qualified for commissions unless 50% of their volume goes to customers. So, for example, affiliates can't self-qualify. This idea of having a monthly PV requirement, which, by the way, every company has, and then saying, well, the easiest way to qualify is just to buy for yourself, which most companies kind of do. The judge in this case says, no, you can't just self-qualify. 50% has to come from customers. Now, there's 3 things that companies can do, and we've boiled these decisions down in the article. The first thing is just pretend like it's Vima's problem and not anybody else's problem, and I think that's very foolish. The regulators hit really close to home on this case. It's like a game of Battleship. I don't know if you remember that game.
Oh, man, I love that game.
Yeah, in years past, the FTC has taken some shots, but they've really missed, right? They've gone after the low-hanging fruit. Companies that nobody really cared about, nobody really liked, right? I mean, everybody agrees Zeke Rewards was a bad company. That was an SEC. That
wasn't a company. That was just a scam. I mean, flat out.
That's an SEC case. Now, Federal Trade Commission went after Burn Lounge. Burn Lounge didn't have a whole lot of supporters. Fortune High Tech didn't have a whole lot of supporters. They had some serious problems before that lawsuit hit, and other lawsuits by the FTC. Here, when they sue a DSA member, a company that was recognized for its ethics in 2013 by the DSA, it's a wake-up call. It's serious, and they sued them for a lot of behaviors exhibited by popular companies. And so anyways, the idea of doing nothing is a really bad idea, of just saying, well, that's Vima's problem. They deserved it. You know, the college thing. We're different. I think that's very foolish. Option 2 is you do away with volume requirements. You have no monthly PV requirements at all. And basically, if people buy, they're buying not because they have to, and it doesn't help them in the pay plan. They're buying because they want product. That's a good thing. The judge in Vima says people were buying primarily to qualify for bonuses. That's option 2. The one that I like, that's right in the middle, that I think is practical, is if you have a monthly volume requirement, require that 50% come from customers. Just say, look, you need to move 100 points. 50 points has to come from registered customers. No more of this certified, hey, we're gonna self-police ourselves. We're gonna check a box where we certify that we are selling 50% to customers. You have to prove that the volume is actually going to third-party customers. And I think that will slow down a lot of these recruitment-heavy programs. And that's a great check on inventory loading. And you'll see better cultures. You will see a much more refined industry. I think that's where we need to go as a space. I think the DSA can lead that effort. I wrote an article a year ago. They're not going to, DSA ain't going to do anything meaningful. So, but those are the 3 choices, and hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, you know, I'd love for you to define what a customer and end user is, and of course we know that the FTC, you know, the goalposts change a little bit over there, and
every case.
You and I talked about this. It's hard to have a standard, so I want to talk about that. But you mentioned the DSA, and I've had a number of conversations with company owners, top executives, and field leaders on the DSA. And of course, working with the MLMIA for several years, you know, most people know me know I'm not a huge fan of the DSA because of what you just explained. This example with what happened with Vima, where they're giving them an award 1 minute, and the next minute they're not even recognizing that, you know, they're a member.
They took the website down. Yeah, the article down.
It's crazy. I am so disappointed in the DSA, and I'm one of the few that will say it publicly. But you know what? I won't even recommend companies join. I had a corporate executive the other day ask me, new company, should I join the DSA? I said, in my opinion, no. And I know that's harsh, but they need to start doing their job.
Not for a new company, especially, right? Because there are better ways to spend your money, and I don't know. I'm a DSA member, so I got to keep my mouth shut. I mean, I'm waiting for a letter in the mail where they kick me out, because I'm a very vocal critic of the lack of leadership over there. Now, I say that I also recognize that the DSA has the difficult job of corralling all these different companies and all these different egos.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is nothing happens. So yeah, I better be careful before I keep going. But now, to answer your question, what is a customer? The judge in Vima says a customer is somebody who is not in the genealogy. So distributors that are buying because they want the product, they're buying for the right reasons. They count, right? They're ultimate users. The commissions are okay, but you need a lot of customer volume, a lot of third-party customer volume to prove value. And if that number isn't high, it's not going to be persuasive. What Vima did, they said that you're a customer if you didn't recruit anybody, and if you didn't buy an affiliate pack, which was $500 worth of product. That makes sense. You're not recruiting. You're not buying inventory. You're acting like a normal customer would act. You're ordering product.
Why else would you be there?
And the judge wasn't persuaded. Now, what hurt Vima was that they had data from 2 years ago where they didn't treat customers like that, right? So 2 years ago, customers were truly third-party people. And that was 30% of the volume, which is still a lot, by the way. They changed their terminology to go with what we were just talking about. You know, if you recruit somebody, if you buy an affiliate pack, then you're a customer. What happened was their customer data, it flipped. It went from 30% to 70%, which is phenomenal. That old data haunted them, right? The judge smelled BS. I think if a company were to start off treating customers and affiliates like that and had a clean database and a clean history, I think it would be a much more compelling argument.
That was when he changed to the affiliate model, and everybody got their arms up that he was throwing MLM under the bus. I know I did the interviews for that. It was a fun time, but that was about the time that he switched that around. And I thought it made sense. I thought he was moving down the right road. I thought he was a lot of it too. We talked about this the other day, Kevin, is the terminology, just the general wording, what we're saying out there, how we're actually promoting the business. The FTC looked at a lot of that around Vima, didn't they?
It did. And so when they get fixated on a company, they're going to find facts that support their case. And I think with any company, if you dig deep enough, you're going to find knucklehead distributors saying crazy things. In Vima's case, it was company sanctioned materials, company created materials that they used. So it's hard. Compliance. It's almost compliance with companies. It's viewed as the brakes when all owners and founders want to do is they want more gas. And you need compliance. You need good compliance to educate distributors on what they can and cannot do. Don't be surprised if somebody makes mistakes if you spend zero time teaching them. And very few companies actually teach good compliance. You need an enforcement history. You know, you don't have to terminate everybody, but you need to catch people and do something, suspend them, lock them out of their back office, something. And there needs to be efforts to monitor what's being said out there online. And unfortunately, most of my clients, they don't invest the resources for compliance.
Right.
They just don't. And what happens is you end up with a sales force that's very irresponsible.
Absolutely. That really is a key issue that they haven't been doing. We've got a few minutes left here in the show, and what thoughts do you have that if any of the owners that will be watching this down the road, or certainly anybody that's in management as well, what thoughts and suggestions would you have for them to look at? What would you say? Because some of them go, oh, okay, they picked on Vima because there was a lot of complaints, there was a lot of things. And granted, that is true, but really any company, and you and I talked about this, really there's very few. Now the party plans, I think they're pretty good. They're pretty solid as far as having any issues. The FTC is probably not going to go after them because they're strictly driven, customer driven. And at the end of the day, though, I think most of the other companies, legitimate, great products like Vima, great owners like BK Borrego, I really think that anybody could potentially be a target here, and you just don't know from one day to the next. What would you make for suggestions to some of them right now to start doing to bulletproof their business and their company so that they don't deal with what BK is going through right now?
There's a lot of things I would recommend. First of all, get D&O insurance to cover yourself in the event something does happen. That's just basic practical advice. But it's a psychology. People need to understand that this can happen to them. And a lot of people, they don't think that it can. They're going to, and the challenge is they have to come to grips with the fact that their revenue growth might need to go from this to this. And that's very unpopular, because what happens is when you get more responsible, growth slows down, right? The enrollments slow down when you lose that sexy sizzle message of fast money, easy money. The product can heal the blind and heal the sick. When you start getting a more responsible message out there, enrollments do slow down. Companies have to accept that as a new reality, because these regulators aren't playing around. And I think you're going to see, actually, I know, you're going to see more regulatory activity against network marketing companies. And so coming to grips that it can happen to them, being okay with slowing down revenue, and then using a compliance message to build up trust. I think that's a huge competitive advantage for companies, where you say, hey, look, when you build a check with us, we want you to keep it. And we have invested significant resources to build up a solid compliance department where your check is safe here. And that would put, if a company were to legitimately do that, it puts them in the top 5% just by itself. It's like, there aren't many safe companies out there. We're trying to be safe. I think that's a powerful draw for people. Now, what's happening is all these networkers are kind of corralling around certain companies. Those companies are high on the list. I wouldn't trust them. And we all know who they are. Don't mention any names.
No J's and O's or P's. None of that. Nothing.
None of that.
None. Yeah, we know. There really are. It is true, and that's great practical advice. I mean, and you could spend a lot of time trying to help these companies, but I think, just like you said, the first thing is awareness. Just, it can happen to you. I mean, a 10-year-old company.
Vima didn't see it coming, right? Vima didn't see it coming, so it can happen to anybody.
A 10-year-old company that can go through that with a product that people love. Once again, please help support BK and his team and family. Buy some of the Vima products. You recommend them whenever you can, even if you're involved in whatever company you're involved in. Do that. One of the things too that I wanted to say, coming up in November, we're going to be doing some more stuff like that. And you and I, from time to time, it'd be great to. I'm sure we'll do some shows in the future. In November, Kevin, I'm going to be hosting Thompson home business radio show, which is the oldest in the profession. And for the entire month, he's given me the option. I said, geez, Tom, what if I break it? And he goes, I trust you. And so I'm going to be doing that for the whole month. And maybe at some point, if we could have you on during that time as well, if you've got the availability for it. But
I'll do it, and I'm so happy it's you and not Chenault. That character, I'm kidding. He's a great interview, and he's a good friend.
He is incredibly special. He's really I got to give him some credit. You know, I've got to give him a lot of credit. But one of the things I got to say is he's not only been supportive of me, but he's been very helpful. And you know, he's the one that really got me to move forward into broadcast media, get forward into having my own radio show back years and years ago. He was the guy that put it in my head. And he says, you know, you can do this. You can do it. Why not? You got the gift for it. Do it. So I got to give him credit because he's one of the guys that really encouraged. And he still does. He's a great supporter. When I went through my my medical challenges here over the summer, he was really right there. And I love the guy. So I get the opportunity. So I'd love to, you know, maybe have you on one of those weeks. It'll be the full month of November. Hopefully we won't break the show. And if I do, I hope you're on with me.
Sign me up, man. Sign me up. I'm in.
So we can have some fun and all. So I guess this time has just flown by. Is there anything else that you want to, you know, make mention of or comment here before we shut down?
No, I just want to thank you for putting this together, and thank you for your friendship. And I'm really happy you're feeling better. And we need more conversations like this. And hopefully you have an audience with distributors. Hopefully they watch this and they be careful with who they join. Stop chasing the easy dollars and think long term. And I think we'll have a better profession and a cleaner profession.
You're absolutely right. And you just reminded me of something that you said earlier when we were talking about this. Is be careful about what you ask for. And as you said, that like the cocaine addiction of the ongoing bridges where people were just driving volume, but the story of the whole company wasn't so much about the product or the value of residual income long term or some of the benefits. It was really more about the company's doing this sales and this growth and this growth. And what happens when it dips? What happens when it drops? Okay, what happens at that point is that people, they lose their whole identity as to why they're building the business, and then they move on to something else. And this has been a problem, just like the old S curve, you know, where you start out a business and it's in formulation and it moves through concentration, and then it goes into hypergrowth, momentum, 3 to 5 years, and then it stabilizes. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, once that 3 to 5 year window is over, what's the story then? What's the next story going to be? Stop building the business on that. If a good business is solid, they got great products, they got a great system, they've got great management, they got great culture, if they got all the right things, they're going to continue to grow into their 10th, 20th, 30th, you know, year and beyond. And we've seen that with many. I mean, I remember even one company, Melaleuca, when they hit 300 million back about the year 2000, and now they're $1.2 billion roughly. Okay, and so the first 15 years or so, they were only a $300 million a year company. So you know what, your companies will grow. If they're solid, you know, if they do the right things, they'll grow. So be careful of what you ask for. You know, be careful out there when you're pitching things. Try to this is a business. Treat it like a business. So anyway, that was just I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, Kevin, but you made a great point earlier when we spoke about that.
No, you're welcome. Just to comment on Melaleuca, Frank has done a phenomenal job with that company, and that's kind of an example of using trust to your advantage, because he didn't offer any deals. Products are clean. Great product reputation, pretty responsible sales force. So and you know they're going to be around 10 years from now, you know. So yeah, good point.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your time. I know you got an incredibly busy schedule, and like I said, I'm looking forward to having you on when we with Thompson Alt show somewhere in November. Have a great week. Thank you, everybody, for listening in, and it's been my pleasure. This is Tony Canuli, the host for the Slight Edge Zone. This is a very special show with my good friend, attorney Kevin Thompson, and he does phenomenal work in the profession. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kevin.
And you're welcome. And real quick, don't you hit that button.
I won't.
ThompsonBurton.com/MLM attorney. That's where you can reach me.
That's awesome. And then tomorrow. And then the video, the piece you're going to be doing on the VEMA part, they'll be able to find that
on the website.
At the website as well. Awesome. I'd recommend you guys go through and read those, because Kevin's got some phenomenal stuff that he's written here over the years that many of you probably aren't even aware of. If you weren't there watching it come out. Thanks again, Kevin. Have a wonderful day, buddy.
You're welcome.